Now, it's not uncommon for an iconic WWE wrestler to decide to revert back to a prior gimmick. This is usually a brief nostalgia run which reminds fans of the golden years of pro wrestlers' careers. It goes without saying that some gimmick revivals have been better than others, but for the gimmick revival to work, there should be an obvious and compelling story to tell with the old gimmick, and they shouldn't just bring it back to sell merchandise or give the wrestler something new to do. But which times were they? Well, join us now as Wrestlelamia looks at 10 WWE wrestlers who revived an old gimmick. Be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell for daily wrestling videos, and follow us on Facebook for exclusive lists. Also check out Wrestlelamia.co.uk and our non-wrestling channel, Incredible. Number 10. Edge. Since Edge came out of retirement in 2020, he hasn't experimented with one of his classic gimmicks. When Edge was first getting started in WWE, one of his first major angles was a storyline which led him teaming up with Gangrel and Christian in the Brood. This stable would become one of the most popular groups of the Attitude Era as a gothic vampire-esque presentation resonated with fans at the time. Fast forward to Edge's feud with Seth Rollins in 2021, and Edge would start to show signs of returning to the Brood persona. Edge would perform a bloodbath on Rollins, and he would even hint that he's going back to a dark place. Edge would even use the Brood entrance at SummerSlam for his match against Rollins, which was a nice surprise to fans. Since the SummerSlam match with Rollins, Edge has reused the Brood entrance on several occasions, so it's mainly used to enhance Edge's character and give his pay-per-view matches a big fight feel. When Edge turned heel in 2022 and formed the Judgment Day stable, the stable at first hand had a rather gothic undertone and clearly took inspiration from the Brood. However, just a few months after the stable formed, Edge would revert back to the ever so popular rated R superstar persona. Number 9. Mark Henry. A former world champion, Mark Henry has had his fair share of gimmicks during his career. Perhaps the most infamous of these was his sexual chocolate persona that Henry had during the Attitude Era. This saw Henry turn into a ladies' man and eventually have a child with Mae Young. In 2010, Henry would decide to bring back a gimmick for one night only. This would be at the Old School Raw event, and Henry would use the sexual chocolate theme. It was great to see him use a classic persona even if it was for just one night. Number 8. JBL. When Brock Lesnar and Goldberg left WWE in 2004, WWE needed to create a new star. Vince McMahon would look towards APA member Bradshaw in the hope of making him a top guy. Bradshaw would turn into John Bradshaw Layfield and would be instantly thrown into a WWE title feud with Eddie Guerrero. JBL was now a hateful, villainous rich snob, and the gimmick change worked wonders. JBL would even ascend to the top of WWE, and WWE had successfully created a new top heel. Even though JBL found his success with his JBL persona, he did revert back to his APA persona on a number of occasions. The first of these was in 2007 when Hornswoggle had hired the APA for protection. Then the APA would reform an appearance in 2012 and 2015 respectively. Number 7. Mick Foley. Now, the three faces of Foley element of Mick Foley's character meant that WWE could always go between three very different characters. Whilst Foley would predominantly use the Mankind persona during his full-time run in WWE, he enjoyed the benefits of bringing back one of the other three gimmicks from time to time. The Cactus Jack gimmick would be used randomly throughout the Attitude Era, and the most well-known revival of the gimmick was in 2000 for Foley's legendary feud with Triple H. In relation to Dude Love, Foley decided to bring back this gimmick in 1998 for a feud with Stone Cold Steve Austin, but he also returned to the gimmick for one night only on Raw 1000. Foley would also bring back the Mankind persona in 2005. This was at Taboo Tuesday pay-per-view, as fans could vote in relation to which face of Foley they wanted to see face Carlito. Now, the fans surprisingly voted for Mankind, and the Mankind persona will be back for one match only. Number 6. Kofi Kingston. In 2016, the New Day would take part in their segment, which would see them enter the Time Machine. When the New Day member Kofi Kingston stepped out of the machine, he had suddenly reverted back to his 2009 persona. Kingston would be dancing along to his classic SOS theme song and would suddenly be talking in a Jamaican accent. Kingston would cut a brief promo which declared that the Jamaican sensation is back one more time and it looks like there's trouble in paradise. It was a humorous segment that was a treat for fans that watched Kingston during the early days of his career. Number 5. Kevin Nash. When rumours circulated in January 2011 that Kevin Nash was going to make a surprise return at the Royal Rumble, fans expected it to either be the NWO version of Nash or the Nash that was in WWE in 2003. However, what they got completely blew the roof off the arena. Nash would revert back to his Diesel persona, the persona he won the WWE title with. Nash, using the Diesel character, received one of the loudest ovations of all time, and it was clear that fans remembered and loved the character. Unfortunately, when Nash returned to WWE once again in the summer of 2011, he would be using his standard Kevin Nash persona, and the Diesel character would be officially retired once again. Number 4. Bray Wyatt. One of the top feuds during SmackDown in the summer of 2020 was the feud between the Fiend Bray Wyatt and Braun Strowman. The two were previously members of the Wyatt family, so there was a ton of potential in the feud. One of the most memorable moments of the feud saw Wyatt revert back to his original persona. The classic Wyatt was back, along with his colourful shirt and fedora. "You look like you've seen a ghost," Wyatt would declare to Strowman. This segment received widespread praise from fans, and it's rare that the WWE recognizes their own continuity, never mind devoting an entire segment to character history and backstory. Number 3. Hulk Hogan. Upon returning to WWE in 2002, Hogan was presented as a heel. He would be using his villainous NWO gimmick, which had brought him great success in WCW. However, WWE quickly realized that fans had no interest in booing the former WWE champion. This all came to a head at WrestleMania 18 and Hogan's showdown with The Rock. The fans adored Hogan, so much so that Hogan became the default babyface in the match. WWE were forced to turn Hogan back into a lovable babyface, and he would bring back the red and yellow for a nostalgia run, which included him winning the WWE title for the final time in his career. Number 2. John Cena. Believe it or not, John Cena was almost fired from WWE before he debuted the Dr. Thugonomics character. This character didn't just save Cena's career, but it also propelled him into superstardom. Cena would cut humorous yet brutal pre-match raps on his opponents before his matches, and this became so popular that WWE had no choice but to turn Cena babyface. Eventually, WWE decided on Cena being the top guy in the company, and this resulted in Cena dropping the rap element of his gimmick entirely. Cena would actually bring back the gimmick on 2 separate occasions. The first of these was in 2012, as he would revert to the Dr. Thugonomics persona during the build for his match with The Rock at WrestleMania 28. Cena would also bring back the gimmick for a special appearance at WrestleMania 35, which was one of the highlights of the entire pay-per-view. The last appearance of the popular gimmick to date is in the Firefly Funhouse match at WrestleMania 36, and this would see Cena enter a weird time loop of experiencing all his prior gimmicks. And number 1. The Undertaker. Upon being buried alive by Kane at 2003 Survivor Series pay-per-view, it was rumored that Taker would be returning to a dark persona. Whilst the American Badass and Big Evil personas were popular, it was clear that it was time for The Undertaker to bring back the classic gimmick. This would take place at WrestleMania 20, as The Undertaker would return back to his supernatural gimmick of the Dead Man and even be joined by his legendary manager Paul Bearer. What made this version of the Dead Man work was that The Undertaker kept virtually the same moveset as he used during his ABA days, meaning that Taker could still have fantastic matches with anyone on the roster. In 2020, The Undertaker was set to have his final match. This would be a boneyard match against Styles, and for his final match, Taker brought back the American Badass persona. This feud completely broke down kayfabe barriers, as AJ would call The Undertaker by his real name, Mark Calloway. This was a huge deal, as Taker had typically been reserved in breaking kayfabe in any manner, but Taker clearly thought that it was time to do something new. Leading up to the match, Taker would cut chilling promos which were a mix of his ABA persona, the Dead Man, and Mark Calloway. This final work of The Undertaker received widespread praise from virtually all the WWE fans. When the Boneyard match actually came, Taker had fully transitioned back to the beloved American Badass persona. But there you have it folks, 10 WWE wrestlers who revived an old gimmick. Be sure to leave your comments down below, and I'll see you next time with some more wrestling content.